It's 4:20 in the Mile High City. Grab your buds. It's time for Pot Talk. Pot Talk. It's where we talk about pot. Pot Talk. It's where we talk about pot. Pot Talk. Talk about pot.
Doc said PTSD, then I got high. Used to have depression too, then I got high. Now I'm shining through, and I know why.
Why, man?
Hey, cause I got high, cause I got high, cause I got high.
That's so awesome. I love that when that song plays, man. Welcome back to Pot Talk here on World Viral TV. My name's Chad, Budtender Stars. Got my buddy Grampa Boots.
What's up?
Hanging out in the rest of the World Viral family. One of my favorite segments this season with our show is Weed Diary, and I can't imagine a better person to have on the couch. We're blessed to have my friend Kayvan Khalatbari running for Denver mayor in 2019 on the couch, man. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. Again.
Always rocking it out, man. It's nice to have you back on the couch, bro.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be more present here in Denver. I set aside the 13 companies and all the board seats to focus on this race over the next year. Fortunate to have it full time until the election in May 2019. So ready to go and just getting out there and meeting and talking with as many people as possible.
That is a lot of business to hand off and delegate. I imagine as a mayor of the city, one of the more popular cities that's under the microscope, you're going to have to be able to delegate. You're going to have to be able to make change as fast as you can, because we know how the world and society needs us to change right now.
Well, you know, I think there's two things that are primary to me on the outset, things that we're really struggling with as a city right now. One's transparency, lack of accountability in our government. Just 2 days ago, our mayor said that it's now going to be disallowed that our independent monitor, right, this checks and balances entity can review the things that are happening in our sheriff's and police department right now.
Right.
We have sexual misconduct allegations. The process have not been handled well with those. We have overcrowded jails full of people with municipal violations and mental health issues.
Right.
We spent more in deputy overtime because of these overflowing jails than we did on affordable housing last year.
Right.
We spent more on violence in our sheriff's department, especially related to settling cases of 2 mentally ill black men getting murdered in jail in the last few years. We settled those cases last year. Spent more on those than we did on affordable housing last year. And to take that person away, that entity away that's there to review this and make sure that we're not dealing with this kind of corruption is really unfortunate that we'd have a mayor that would transparently say no about that. And then housing, obviously. There's a whole lot more money on the table to build a whole lot more housing very quickly, and there's a lot of creative solutions in between sleeping on the ground and being able to afford a $1,500 one-bedroom. Many are very inexpensive, right? Protecting renters' rights and having a legal defense fund for people getting evicted and looking at community land trusts and other zoning options for accessory dwelling units, tiny homes, co-living. You know, we need to change how we address housing, how we look at housing in the city, and make sure it's considerate of how people live today. Not just the money that they can afford, but what they're comfortable in considering to be adequate housing. And there's a lot of people that live in interesting situations that are perfectly fine. They have been for a while, but they're doing so under the radar and often illegally because we're not allowing them to persist in the way that I think humans are evolving to live, which is a lot different than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Very true. I know you are very hands-on with the city. I know that having spent nights in tiny houses and on the streets, knowing everyone, especially with your background within our industry and whatnot, you've kind of bumped elbows with pretty much everybody in the city. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, just being in the capacity that I am on so many topics, whether it be in business or advocacy or running a ballot initiative or just being a human, right, in the city, meeting a lot of people and creating real relationships. You know, back to sleeping on the streets, or how did I learn whether running for office again was right for me? I ran for city council 3 years ago just to kick the tires.
Right.
You know, like I like to be experiential in my learning. I like to really throw myself out there and make sure that if I'm talking about something that I at least try to understand the perspective of the people that are in those situations, where they're coming from. And I've learned so much and gained so much more of an appreciation for the position that people living on the streets are in by being out there. And that doesn't mean that I'm out there every day and dealing with they're dealing with day in and day out. That must be so incredibly hard to navigate. But even me throwing myself out there a couple nights a year and just having real conversations with them, seeing how police interact with you, when you're trying to sleep and you get swept 4 times in 6 hours, even as someone like me, they didn't know that I'm if they think that I'm homeless, I'm going to get treated like that person.
Same way.
I want to feel that experience.
Yeah, I've been really curious being in the cannabis industry, and I know I'm sure that that's going to be a pretty hot topic along in the next year. There's been some notorious governors and mayors along the way right now, for good reasons and for bad. What do you think what are you kind of shooting for and hoping for when it comes to your campaigning to be able to represent the way that Denver needs to be represented?
So regarding the cannabis industry, I think it's important to note that our current mayor, he's been here for 7 years now in his position.
Yep.
Really during, since the birth of the regulated era here, and through all of this period of us leading kind of the world, or at least being the first, right, to do a lot of these things, he's never stepped foot in one of these businesses. And I think that that's a huge testament to his disrespect for the industry. We have Department of Health, Excise and Licenses, our fire department here that are very critical of the industry, that put us under a microscope that no other industry has to go through, that's put under the scrutiny that no other industry in Denver has put through. And it's really been difficult. We have some great operators that are moving out of Denver because they can't deal with this anymore. Right. 6 years ago, we got zoned into these kind of poor industrial neighborhoods. In 2016, City Council, because of people in these neighborhoods, decided to put a cap on the number of licenses we could have. Definitely in some of these neighborhoods that were especially concentrated with cannabis businesses, they said there's too many there. We can't allow any more. Only to when we passed the social use initiative in 2016, they took what were these distance requirements that you were required to open a consumption place. Right. It had to be 1,000 feet away from a school. Yep. So during rulemaking, the city, because they hate the industry, put it 1,000 feet from also parks and rec centers and treatment facilities and pools and rec centers and all these other things that when you started drawing these 1,000-foot radius around all these entities that we couldn't be close to, it put these cannabis social consumption establishments only in these areas that they just said that same year were too concentrated with cannabis businesses in these poor neighborhoods and these places that aren't going to be a great fit for tourists that are visiting here or just all the people in Denver that consume cannabis. These should be all over Denver like bars are. Yeah. I have a business down on South Broadway and there's got to be 30 bars within 4 blocks. Right. But oh my gosh. You couldn't open a cannabis consumption establishment there because it's too close to all these entities. It drives me nuts. So I want to get in there and really take out the kind of the double standards that are associated. Let's get to it. This is a safer substance than alcohol, than tobacco, than McDonald's, and it doesn't need to be treated so unfairly. Yeah. I know you made a huge push for the social 300 was it? Yeah, Initiative 300. Yeah, Initiative 300. And I know that now it's even like these days right now we're talking about having possible tasting rooms within the shops. So the evolution of the industry has been kind of crazy and we've needed some of the more predominant public figures to be able to represent us properly with the right ideas and stuff. Talk a little bit about what your plan is to show the city that this is an okay thing. Well, speaking about the positives, right? Like we have Governor Hickenlooper, Mayor Hancock, who when they speak about the cannabis industry are either critical or speak of it in a manner where this is a grand experiment. Like you're still in the middle of it. That's like so it is.
I'm really surprised. I heard Hickenlooper go, I'm really surprised that it's working, but hey, we've got a lot of revenue. And then he just goes into how he's spending the money, and that's really what it comes down to. I mean, the experiment was prohibition. The experiment was the drug war. Right. And they failed miserably, both of them, right? So we're undoing the harms that's been putting on communities, especially communities of color, for so very long. So I think what I would do is talk about the facts, right? The facts are teen use is down since regulation. Yep. Probably my favorite stat is that cannabis use is actually up between 18 and 35-year-olds, but alcohol consumption is down. And that was why we got into this in the first place, right? To have people feel comfortable using the safer alternative. I would talk about the fact that even though we're spending a lot of it
inappropriately collecting a lot of tax revenue.
Right.
You know, $150 million a year that our state and municipalities are collecting that they're spending on things that the government and communities say that we need. Again, we can spend it better, but it's out there. But
I mean, our
focus on these
schools are
positives.
massive. You know, like the school problem is a massive problem in the state right now.
Yeah, you know, it's good to bring that up. That's actually really unfortunate about Amendment 64 when it passed, is people voted on this thing that said the first $40 million were going to schools.
Right.
On the surface, it sounds like a great thing.
Right.
When you get down to it, that $40 million is spent on capital construction and like major renovation projects, like capital expenses. So essentially what we have is this money going to developers and contractors to build schools that we probably don't need.
Right.
What it should have been allocated towards are teacher salaries and classroom supplies and things like
Making
that.
the structures better. Right.
So if we would have done that again, that's where I think we would have wanted to put that money. But let's focus on the positives. Hickenlooper likes to say this is still a grand experiment.
Yeah.
What he doesn't say is that it's been a huge success because 11,000 people every year in Colorado aren't going to jail
Right.
for using a substance that's safer than all these things I mentioned earlier.
Right.
Right.
Employment up. Kid
We have
use
the lowest
that.
unemployment in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's led to some of these other issues, right? We have housing and things like that are getting out of whack, but that's not all cannabis, right? Colorado's a desirable place. Energy and tech are booming here. Like, there's a lot of reasons that people are moving here for employment, for quality of life, for recreation.
Right.
It's like I've been driving a Lyft car for a couple months, and every single person that comes here is just happy to be here. And I grew up here, and
Denver, what?
it's like I knew this place was a secret. I knew it, and the secret's out, guys. It's not all about the cannabis. It's Colorado's rad.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be mad at people for moving here.
No, it's a
right?
place-
I
it's a
moved here.
rad
I wasn't born here. I moved here 14 years ago.
Right.
A lot of people move here because they're getting away from another part of the country that's god awful.
Right? And it's like people are mean. And, you know what I mean? It's like they want sunshine and
And I can't get my weed. What? No.
So what we need to do is not, chastise these people that are moving here,
Right.
but welcome them and try to develop and build this city in an inclusive way.
Right.
Amen.
Right.
Yeah.
We need, with all the building that's going on, we're replacing 1 to 5 units and putting in its place 15 to 45.
Right.
Amen.
Like, there's ways there to include those people that are getting displaced right now.
Well, and in speaking with the expansion of Denver, being a native myself, like I love friends that end up moving here. Like for the most part, the good people stick around. You know what I mean? But I know that you also have to align yourself, and you have to align yourself with the right people to make sure that the city is sprouting the right way. And I saw recently that you were talking about the Amazon warehouse possibly coming here, and how it might not be the best idea. And I was reading on it, and I agree with some of your points.
Yeah, and it's actually what I'm opposed to is not necessarily the warehouse, which I think is going out in Aurora, but the headquarters, the second.
That's right. That's right.
The one in,
Right.
yeah.
So when you take a look at what we're dealing with right now, with being 30,000 affordable units short, and what we should be using is not the word affordable, but attainable,
Right.
because affordable is based off an arbitrary scale that makes poor people out of rich people, if that makes sense. The higher the AMI goes, if somebody's making $200,000 on average in a neighborhood,
Right.
affordable housing at that top mark is like making $160,000.
Oh, yeah.
So don't call it affordable anymore. We need attainable housing.
Yeah.
When we have this housing shortage, again, 30,000 short, more than half the renters in the city paying more than a third of their income on housing, 25% of renters on the verge of homelessness, per a recent study that came out. When you look at our low unemployment rate, right, people are already employed. They're working here in Denver at a rate that's the lowest across the country, and we already have major traffic problems, and we've invested zero money in public transportation
Right.
to move people from one place to another in the city without driving.
Right.
And when you add these three things together and you invite 50,000 more people to come to your city within a very short period, we simply do not have the infrastructure to hold these people, especially if they want to build downtown. Those 50,000 people are going to move here.
Right.
And if they are sourced from Colorado, that means you're stripping small local businesses of their most talented people that are going to go to Amazon, and then they're going to have to bring in 50,000 more people from outside
Right.
the city to come move here. It doesn't make sense. We simply don't have the infrastructure. And I got to tell you, I think Bezos and Amazon is as evil as I think they're becoming.
Walmart's more evil. No.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Amazon owns so much more of this
Yeah.
world, so much more of our
They've taken that.
processes. They're owning every bit.
Yeah.
We've never seen a monopoly like them that owns everything.
Right.
You know,
it's very
pretty
true.
intense.
They just don't own all the steel.
Yeah,
Or all the
Like,
train
right,
car
right.
manufacturers. They own everything.
Every
Yeah.
single thing.
And I just think that's a huge problem, and it's going to put just more of a pressure on this displacement and inequity that we're seeing being built in the city. And I think Amazon's far too smart to look at Denver and say, yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. Very cool, man. Kayvan Khalatbari is on our
mind-blowing.
couch, chilling out with us here on Pot Talk World Viral. We're here every week starting at 4:20. We appreciate you when you come and join the sesh. We're going to be back in just a little bit. We got plenty more to talk about. Stick around, okay?
Yeah, great.